have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum, and welcome back.
Ann Northrup. Yes, I've returned. Although one story we're going to do at the end is entitled by me, Why I Left Cabo Too Soon.
Okay.
Stay tuned for that. But I want to thank, of course, Maren Johns and Rob Shooter for sitting in. And I have to say, I laughed out loud when Maren Johns objected to the term kangaroo court.
Oh, as only an Australian can.
It still makes me laugh.
Okay. Well, in the news, this doesn't make me laugh. Trump has vowed to end protections for LGBTQ students on day one if he's elected.
Just another reason not to elect him. Get to work, folks. The FBI and Homeland Security have issued a warning about potential ISIS attacks on Pride events. They don't have any real information. They're just kind of speculating.
Yes, and there are those domestic terrorists as well.
Yes.
Amidst soaring support for same-sex marriage, a study after 20 years of it in the United States finds no ill effects and many positive ones.
Surprise! More than half of Target stores are not going to display Pride merchandise this year.
In Virginia schools, they're banning rainbow art and renaming schools for Confederate generals.
Well, I guess it just couldn't last very long. Ay, ay, ay. Anti-trans laws are advancing in South Carolina and Mississippi, but have stalled in Alabama.
They got confused. A judge tells suburban New York county executive that he can't ban trans girls from sports facilities in the county.
We owe a debt of gratitude to roller derby for that one. And a California body has ordered a surfing competition to reinstate a trans contestant.
An appeals court tells a gay teacher from a North Carolina Catholic high school he's a minister and he can be fired.
An appeals court told a did that. Or it's a long list. I'm out of practice. Orlando, Florida cops are going undercover to arrest gay and bisexual men seeking sex in parks. This is a story we've heard a million times.
Pioneering sexologist Milton Diamond, who stood up for intersex babies, has died.
And there was a horrific arson attack in Buenos Aires, Argentina, that killed one lesbian and seriously injured 3 others.
Eurovision gets its first non-binary winner.
Yay. And Kevin Spacey, in a multi-part special, dismissed all 10 men alleging he sexually harassed them throughout his life.
You can watch that documentary, and it's here in the United States now.
On Max.
And we want to remind you that Idahobit, the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia, is Friday, May 17th, celebrated worldwide. Do some Googling about events in your area.
But if
do we have any more time?
We're done. Goodbye. If you were wondering what the gay angle on the Trump trial is, and I'm certainly glued to the reports of that, as I'm sure you are, but he took time during this trial, as he's being hammered with everything else, to try to distract people by assuring his supporters that if he is reelected president, he will get rid of all these protections for trans people that Biden has reinstated after Trump wiped him out the first time he was president.
On day one, which is the day he becomes dictator, as he has said.
He's got a big agenda for day one.
He does.
He can retire after that.
Now, you know, if you've noticed, his trial is being attended by, a lot of Republican miscreants. Even Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, showed up for
And
it.
now they're all dressing alike. They're all wearing blue suits and red ties.
It's a cult.
When the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, showed up this week, that really was just...
I am not a member of an organized political party. I am a Democrat.
If only you had made that up in the first place.
Will Rogers.
Yeah.
Now, he spent most of the week listening to people who worked for him confirming his criminality, and from Stormy Daniels, who held her ground and more on the witness stand. She was quite impressive.
Stormy's very smart. Have you seen the documentary on her on Netflix?
No.
Really good, worth seeing.
This is my favorite exchange. Trump's lawyer said, and relevant to our program, Trump's lawyer said, "So you have a lot of experience in making phony stories about sex seem real. Just like," and she said, "the sex in the films is very much real. Just like what happened in the hotel room." She said, "That's why it's pornography and not a B movie." And she won't be slut-shamed. She also said, "Real men respond to testimony by being sworn in and taking the stand." Oh, wait, never mind.
I'm telling you, she is very, very smart. She really, really is. And Michael Cohen is doing a great job at being, controlled and moderate and smart about what he's saying.
As he would say, yes, ma'am.
Or no, ma'am. It'll be interesting to see, because certainly they have all the facts and they are testifying brilliantly, whether the jury is willing to convict him on this. And I'm not super confident
They
of
do
that.
have at least one juror who reads Truth Social, so. All
but
right.
they also have lawyers who are taking extensive notes on the jury.
Good. All right.
And they have the Rise and Resistors outside doing.
Right.
Jackie Rudin from Rise and Resist ran into Suzanne Craig, the New York Times reporter, last night on the street.
Right.
It turns out they live a block apart, and told her how great she thought her analysis was. And Suzanne said, "Oh, you're the group that's out there protesting."
Well, let's give them some good news. It's 20 years after the first same-sex marriages performed in the United States, in Massachusetts. And for all the backlash in the state legislatures against LGBTQ rights, a new Gallup poll found that 71% of Americans now support same-sex marriage, including 49% of Republicans and a majority of regular churchgoers. That's up from 27% when Clinton and the Congress enacted DOMA in 1996. It didn't pass 50% until 2012 when Obama came out for it again. So research from the RAND Corporation just found that 2 decades of same-sex marriage have been broadly positive for the gay and non-gay community alike, because at the time the right wing kept saying, this will destroy heterosexual marriage. And of course...
And destroy the country.
Oh, yes, that's absolutely right. So the opposite's been true. And
it turns out there have been more opposite-sex marriages since same-sex marriage. I think same-sex marriage put a spotlight on marriage again, and a positive light.
Hey, the gays are doing it. Why aren't we?
They seem to be enjoying it. Maybe we could too.
Well, I was, and of course, for same-sex couples, it's meant better health, better financial security. More than 1 million same-sex couples have married in the United States.
And some have divorced.
Oh, yes. Well, and that is a benefit, because it structures you're getting, because the breakups could be pretty ugly over property and things.
Yes, we've told story after story of terrible breakups where people wanted to disavow the partnership so that they could hang on to the kids or the belongings or whatever. And this entails rights and responsibilities.
All right.
So not that it's for everyone, clearly not for us.
Okay.
Together or apart.
Okay. So Republicans in the House followed through on banning earmarks for all non-profit organizations in order to defund LGBTQ ones. Out Democrat Representative Mark Pocan.
Yes.
He just called the Republicans bigots. That's why they're doing this. And the House is, of course, in the process, cutting off food banks, religious organizations, scouts, veterans groups, etc., in their zeal to destroy us.
It's really hard to imagine they're going to get away with that without alienating like 90% of the population. How dare they? That's how much they hate us or think that we are, in fact, a great scapegoat for their election chances. They don't want to have to face voters saying they voted for an earmark that supports an LGBTQ organization.
I just want to hear from an evangelical, group that's been getting federal money that's not going to, saying we're not supporting you anymore.
I would like to hear that. I'm not holding my breath. I'm interested that the Boy Scouts are rebranding as Scouting America now that they're including female scouts in an attempt to, steal them from the Girl Scouts.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to help their funding chances.
Okay. The House also voted overwhelmingly, you saw, to block Marjorie Taylor Greene's motion to vacate this speakership. Only 14 Republicans stood by the braying representative from Georgia. 43 Democrats voted not to block the motion, including some of the most left-leaning and out Representative Robert Garcia of Long Beach.
Love him.
Out Representatives Mark Takano and Mark Pocan, Wisconsin, voted present. But 163 Democrats voted basically to keep the House moving. And I think I would have voted the same myself.
Well, it's a tough call. You don't want to support someone like that who's so hateful.
It's a matter of my job.
I understand.
That kind of
Yeah, there's also a point of view that you burn the place down. But
okay. Well,
I'm not saying which way I would have voted.
All
I'm
right.
just saying it's not such an easy call, and there's honor on both sides.
And then the House Republicans raked city school chiefs over the coals for not doing enough to stop anti-Semitism and are pushing the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act that puts into federal civil rights law a definition of anti-Semitism that says rejection of Israel as a Jewish state is anti-Semitism. And look, the rise in anti-Semitism is real, and it's been going on for a bit now, and it's intensive.
Several thousand years.
Well, all right, but I mean, more so in recent years. But these Republicans are in lockstep with the anti-Semitic leader of their party, Donald Trump, who's made many anti-Semitic comments, and have a base that is the natural home of people who hate Jews. And what's more, these Republicans are doing all they can to end diversity, equity, and inclusion, to curb racism, homophobia, and anti-trans prejudice. Instead, they foment it.
Yes, and they lie about it, and they exaggerate, and they twist things, and it's really
They're
just
fighting for the
shameful.
right to say that Jews killed Christ because it's in the Bible, and they don't want that to be against the law.
Okay. Well, meanwhile, let's move to Pride celebrations
Yes.
coming up next month. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security issued a formal warning that Pride attacks are possible from foreign terrorists, also, domestic terrorists. But they have no proof of this, and they're citing threatening phone calls a year ago.
Well, with anti-LGBTQ rhetoric, and they're citing Pride events as soft targets. Of course, there are so many soft targets in the country. Go to Times Square.
All day, every day. All
God,
day, every day. So it's not that we don't think you should be careful, but let's also not get hysterical about this. We've heard these threats a long time
Well,
now.
I mean,
don't want to be in a position of having to apologize for this,
Right.
but I also don't want people to get extreme. And it's like the right-wing warning that same-sex marriage is going to destroy America.
I'm still going to the Reclaim Pride March, which is on the last Sunday of June 30th, from Sheridan Square at 11 a.m., and the Stonewall down to the Battery in Lower Manhattan, in view of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. Well, the idea was to start, we always try to have some intersection with the Stonewall, often ending up near there. But this year we decided to start there. I think it's actually going to step off at 11:30 and then proceed downtown to Battery Park. And I'm going to be on a plane out of town.
Oh.
But I'm helping plan it. I have a conference Zoom call tonight. And I'm also helping plan and will be at the Drag March on Friday night.
Okay.
And then there's the Dyke March on Saturday night.
You get absolution.
Well, it was stupid. I forgot to Think about the fact
The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Wait, as long as we're in
right.
Pride,
Stay on Pride.
we should do Target,
Oh, yes.
which has announced that they are cutting back on their availability of Pride merchandise in their stores this year. I have to say, I thought they went a little over the top in previous years with their easy tuck bathing suits and stuff.
Well, I mean, look.
They were trying to be correct.
They say that it's still going to be available online, except they're ending Pride merchandise for kids.
Yes, in online too, not just in stores. Did we put up a picture of the guy who's taking down a Pride display? That's a right-winger who objected to the displays
it
last
was
year.
making the issue was, especially in some, more conservative areas, but could happen anywhere, the employees were feeling unsafe.
Well, corporations in general are cutting back on their Pride sponsorships this year. New York's Heritage of Pride has noted a declination of...
Even in New York.
Yeah. Well, we warn them. Corporations are fair weather friends. That's why the Queer Liberation March by Reclaim Pride has no corporate support.
And most of these corporations never stop funding anti-LGBTQ candidates for public office.
Even when they are supporting Pride events, they support right-wing candidates at a higher rate because they want legislation in their favor for tax breaks and such.
Okay. So, 11th Circuit?
Sure.
Court of Appeals covers Alabama, Florida, and Georgia. They affirmed a district court ruling in favor of trans police officer in Georgia who sued after being denied gender confirmation surgery under Houston County's employee health law. It was a 2-to-1 ruling, split along party lines. TILDEF, Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, represented Anna Lange, a 15-year veteran. Now, if
maybe Lang.
Yeah,
could
Lange.
Yep.
If the Court of Appeals en banc, when all of them get together, well, that'll be 7 Republicans and 5 Democrats, so could lose there. It might end up in the Supreme Court. She was told when she came out by her boss, I don't believe in sex changes, but you can wear the female uniform.
It's just fascinating how people pass judgment. There are endless debates that we read on various email chains about gender care for trans youth, and it's mostly by people who are cisgender and not personally involved in these things. And we think women should have the right to control their own bodies. Why not everybody else?
The New York State Board of Regents proposed gender-neutral rules to determine when a female or male student can play on a sports team of the opposite sex, opening the door to more co-ed teams. It lets girls try out for boys' teams and vice versa, as long as the same sport is not offered in the same season to both boys and girls. So girls could play football, boys could play field hockey. The Public High School Athletic Association said they don't expect these new rules to impact existing rules on trans participation in sports.
Well, there's some concern that if they do this, then boys will flood the field hockey teams and girls will be pushed out. But I think there will be some regulations that will try to keep everything equal and fair. And how will this be affected by the fight over the state ERA? An upstate New York judge ruled it off the ballot.
Right.
I was surprised to learn that New York State doesn't have a state ERA.
I remember in the 1970s
Yes.
when we voted on it,
Yes.
and it failed.
That does ring a bell.
I can remember women of my mother's generation, she would be 104 now, but saying, I'm not letting some man run out on me. It was the attitude they had. And it was like their way of life was threatened.
Well, it's like how long they fought no-fault divorce in this state.
Please, the last ones to do it.
Yeah.
But, and there were National Organization for Women argued against no fault as well.
I know. wrongly, I
But
think.
in terms of the ERA, and this covers gender identity, sexual orientation, reproductive rights, abortion rights, all that kind of stuff. So apparently, the state Senate did not follow a procedure the first time they passed it. You have to pass it twice. You're supposed to wait 20 days and get an advisory from the Attorney General, and they didn't do it. And they're saying this has been done many, many times before, and we prevailed. So our Attorney General, Tish James, is going right to the Court of Appeals, the High Court, and saying, get our ERA back on the ballot this November.
Because the state legislature is out of session now and can't do it
Well, they
correctly,
can always be
right?
called. Could be. Doesn't. It's not that they. At this point, it's just up to the judges.
Okay. Well, we know sometimes we can count on them, sometimes we can't.
And we can't count. Well, actually, in Alabama, a bill to expand the state's "Don't Say Gay" law died in the legislature because everyone was confused about what it meant.
They couldn't figure it out.
Now look, public schools already were prohibited from leading discussions on LGBTQ identities through the 5th grade. The new bill would have extended that to the 12th grade, as Ron DeSantis did in Florida. Opponents said it would force LGBT students and staff to go back into the closet. There was a concern about whether it applied to messages on bumper stickers in parking lots.
Please, I'm so confused. I stopped listening 2 minutes ago.
Democrats said it was bullying.
But Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves is not confused. He has put into effect a new law that citizens can sue if they see a trans person in the bathroom that corresponds to their current gender identity.
And not the sex assigned at birth, which is their legal term.
I almost went searching for an illustration for this story of a trans man so that I could put that up and say, Governor, is this who you want in the women's bathrooms?
Right.
Because that, in effect, is what he's put into effect.
It also covers frat and sorority houses. It requires single-sex restrooms, changing areas and dorms. It subjects people to lawsuits, but not the educational institutions, interestingly. Reeves said Mississippi is pushing back against kooky ideas that harm biological women.
Kooky.
This from a state that has made all abortions illegal, except in cases where the mother's life is at stake or when a pregnancy is the result of rape.
In South Carolina, the legislature has banned all medical care for trans youth starting in January, and all public funds for all trans care, adults and youth.
But the great thing is that the Campaign for Southern Equality has launched the Southern Trans Youth Emergency Project to help fund and provide info to families so that these youth can continue to receive the treatments that they need despite the ban. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in April that government and state-funded health care and insurance plans cannot exclude coverage for gender-affirming medical care. So LGBTQ advocates for in South Carolina, wait a minute, yeah, wait a minute, forget it. Look, we're going to give you the website of the program, Southern Trans Youth Emergency Project, so that you can use it if you need it.
Go to our website at gayusatv.org, sign up for our weekly email, 1 email a week, where we give you information like that so that you can not rely on sorting out the mishmash of what we say, and it will be there for you to click on the link and get a few extra things too.
And what I meant to say was that the advocates, because of the court decisions, are ready to sue again over it.
In Virginia, at Fort Defiance High School, a student, they put together an art show called a trauma show that is supposed to allow students to do art that's related to the subject of trauma. So student Abby Driscoll did a piece of art called God Loves You, But Not Enough to Save You, which is about homophobia.
It shows a hand dripping rainbow colors on now the background are pages of a Bible.
Yes, and that was considered dicey. So there were parents or community members who tried to censor this and get it stopped, but the school board saved it. They said, no, we're not going to censor this. We're going to keep it.
And then they didn't they then pass some regulation that it will never happen again in the future? Because this was only one day.
Well, then they put a Confederate name on it.
Okay. Well,
Joking.
It drew tons of attention to the work. That's what you accomplished with this.
Yes, as always.
And by the way, the artist said, the piece represents the idea that growing up queer meant you couldn't be saved by God. And that's why I want to invoke Jared Carmichael here, because on his show this week, Gerard Carmichael, because he had it out with his mother.
Yep.
She's very rejecting of his homosexuality. But when she tried to say, I love you unconditionally, he said, no, you love me conditionally. Don't give me that BS. It was
very moving. It was provocative. It was striking. The whole show has been important, I think, and tough. And watching Gerard Carmichael on HBO is worthwhile. And they're just like half-hour episodes.
Right, and staying in Virginia again, the Lost Cause is gaining ground in Shenandoah County, voted overwhelmingly for Trump. The school board voted 5-1 to restore the names of Confederate leaders on 2 schools after...
See?
Huh?
Nothing. My previous reference. Go ahead.
Yeah, after a previous board removed them in 2000 in the wake of the George Floyd murder. The county's 90% white, and it's a kick in the teeth to the students, especially kids of color, who'll have to go to schools named for people who fought a war to keep people like them enslaved.
We're in a real battle in this country, and another school issue in North Carolina where a Catholic high school teacher was threatened with firing by his school when he came out as being married as a gay man. Drama teacher Lonnie Ballard. The lower court supported him. He's on the left there with his husband on the right. The lower court supported the teacher and said, you can't be fired. You're, allowed to be who you are.
You're a drama teacher.
Exactly.
You're not a religious teacher.
But then the school went to the federal appeals court, and the federal appeals court said, no, the school can declare anybody a minister who is an employee of theirs, and they control the minister's messages, and therefore you can be fired by the school.
Yeah. Well, let's see if all the teachers comply with Catholic teaching.
Oh, you don't think they're going to be consistent, do you?
And it also raises, and I feel for this guy because he was a beloved teacher.
Of course.
On the other hand, why the hell do you want to work for an institution that holds these views?
Well, it's all for the kids.
Well, the kids have no problem with it.
Of course. And coming up north to Long Island, we've had the example of the Nassau County executive who got up in his high horse and decided to issue an executive order banning any county facility, parks, tracks, whatever, from hosting events, renting to any organization that supports trans kids. And
there he is with a friend of his.
Caitlyn Jenner. And our Attorney General, Tish James, who you've heard a lot about, said, whoa, wait a minute, we have a law against that in this state. You can't discriminate. And went to court. And Tish didn't go to court.
Right.
The roller derby went to court in Nassau County and said, hey, we have trans members and we support trans people, and how dare you tell us we can't rent county facilities? And the court has now sided with the roller derby and said that this guy is out of line. He cannot issue an executive order like that.
There's no legislation backing you up on this. Blakeman is a real piece of work. He's a real Neanderthal and a disgrace to my home county of Nassau out there in Long Island.
Your people.
In interviews this week on WCBS, he was asked about campus protests, and he said, they're professional agitators funded by the Communist Party. The Communist Party? They went out of business in this country a long time ago. I mean, the Communist Party. It's back to the 1950s.
There's still a few around, but it is unbelievable these people get elected. Unbelievable. But that's the low information voters who've been lied to and manipulated into this point of view that they're scared.
Yep.
They're scared.
Well, but legislator, at least we see a legislator in Tennessee, Justin Jones, standing up for the We're Here drag show, on HBO cast. There he is, right in the chamber with them.
The rest of the chamber was empty, by the way.
Okay.
But he did bring them into the chamber. We're Here again on HBO. It's 4th season, I think, now. Isn't it 4th?
I think 4th and possibly last.
Provocative as always, going into these towns. The first 3 shows of the season were set in Tennessee, in Murfreesboro, primarily. They have a whole new cast. Yes. Shangela, Bob, and Eureka are gone. Now they have Sasha Velour and a couple of others. I remember Sasha because Sasha is a Vassar graduate.
Oh.
Yeah. But they are, again, challenging local mores, hooking up with LGBTQ people in these small towns.
And non-gay people who they bring into their performances.
Yes.
It's very moving.
Yeah, very moving, always. Depressing in Murfreesboro because they're very upfront about the discrimination and ignorance and hatred there. But just very nice to see them meeting with Justin Jones in full drag in the Capitol and him standing up with them and for them as a straight man who got kicked out of the legislature for speaking
because he stood up on gun control.
Yeah.
In Florida, police used a gay-bi hookup app to entrap gay men to trap men, gay and bi men, I guess, San Lando Park, Altamonte Springs, and nab some high-profile men, including a trustee at Rollins College who's being charged with, prostitution, soliciting a prostitute, and a Seminole. They also got a Seminole County Sheriff's Deputy employee. Now at Liberty Park in Lake Mary. The real crime must be completely under control because they're able to spend so much time.
Well, again,
doing this.
And the news media engaged in hysteria around this. They repeated this prostitution ring lie.
Well, one of these guys they got is quite wealthy and has high-powered lawyers, and I think will be able to beat the charge. But he's of course been horribly embarrassed.
I mean, these are guys who, for various reasons, go to the parks and trolling for sex.
And then the cop gets in the car and says, "Show me what you got."
Yeah, I'll pay you. And then
Mike Bloomberg had a sting like that going on in New York.
Yes. Well, it hasn't stopped. And then there's a little scandal going on in the U.S. Navy where someone put up cameras on ships and videoed sailors masturbating in bathroom stalls and whatever, and then posted it all on Pornhub.
It's been going on for more than a century. Franklin Roosevelt conducted a sting when he was Assistant Secretary of the Navy in Newport. Using cute young sailors to solicit other guys to find out who was queer.
There was a
Roosevelt.
wonderful series of books written by a guy who joined the Navy and the Army and the Marines. I'm not getting this entirely correct, but he wrote about gay sex in each of the services, and they were just fascinating, wonderful books. The Navy. And it was about sailors their ships are out at sea, and the sailors meet on the fantail at night in the back of the ship and have sex.
I have to say, I lost an old friend of mine this week.
Maybe it was the Marines.
I lost an old friend of mine who was 91 this week. Sorry to lose him, had a good long run. But he told me, like in the last weeks of his life, when I was in the Navy, somebody turned me in just said I was homosexual, which he was. And he said it really ruined 10 years of my life. Couldn't get work. I couldn't get jobs where I needed, my discharge things. I became a bartender for a while with it in mind. That's kind of why he went into theater stuff. But it really broke him.
Imagine if people were going after you like this and you were in a situation where you couldn't get work.
You don't even have to be gay. Somebody just has to point to you and say, he's gay, I want to get rid of him, turn him in.
Well, meanwhile, you have someone like the kicker for the champion Kansas City Chiefs, this guy Harrison Butker, who gave a speech at Benedictine College, a graduation speech. He's a young guy, and he gets up and talks about how women should be at home having babies, and
Sounds like Putin.
Gay people are the worst evil, and it's just horrible stuff.
What do the kids do?
The kids were booing and shaking their heads. But this guy, he wasn't stopped. He wasn't, the college administration was very proud of having had him. I want him off the Kansas City Chiefs, but that's
In
me.
Indiana, the Attorney General Todd...
What does Taylor Swift have to say about that?
Yeah. In Indiana, Attorney General Todd Rokita told businesses in the state that they do not have to follow the EEOC guidelines about not misgendering trans employees, says no state or federal law requires a coworker to use preferred pronouns or with fellow employees. No, Mr. Rokita, it would just be good manners.
Polite.
And
Well,
he's
they're suing, you know. At least a dozen state attorneys general are suing against the new Biden regulations or guidelines about how to treat trans people.
In Oklahoma, the House has an administrative rules committee that routinely approves or disapproves rules promulgated by state agencies. And they did a lot of that this week, but they held back on that horrible Ryan Walters from the education department
They're going
because they
after
thought
him.
he was making too much policy
Yes,
this way.
yes.
All this anti-LGBTQ stuff. He also wanted to include in curricula acknowledgement of a creator and the concept of good and evil are real and universal, rather than relativistic concepts.
I think Ryan Walters has hit his sell-by date. I think he has.
He's really evil.
He is really evil, and people are waking up to it. He got too loud and proud about all this homophobic and misogynist views, and he's going down.
Hasn't stopped Ron DeSantis. In Manatee County, the Florida Department of Transportation announced that the Sunshine Skyway Bridge will not be lit up in rainbow colors for Pride or any special colors all over the summer, Gun Violence Day, all these, Juneteenth, all these things. Can't have days because we want to get rid of the gays.
Red, white, and blue from Memorial Day to Labor Day on the bridge. Well, clever, I guess.
Racism, homophobia, and sexism.
Yeah, but meanwhile, Queers for Palestine in Central Florida, Queers for Palestine, held a little demo blocking a highway, an interstate highway. There they are. 3 women who are members of Central Florida Queers for Palestine. They held banners, and they did it near Disney. They object to some, what they think of as anti-Islamic Disney characters. They were arrested. They were then freed on bail. And they, part of their banner said, remember Nakba 1948, which was when the State of Israel was created, right, and 700,000 Palestinians were asked to leave.
Okay, we better move on.
Yes.
The California Coastal Commission, a state agency, ordered Huntington Beach Longboard Pro competition, which is surfing, to include trans surfer Sasha Jane Lowerson in the female category to comply with state law. The International Surfing Association has a trans-inclusive policy.
Look at that picture. Wow. All right, and...
in New York City, we told you how Manhattan Community Education Council voted to urge the Board of Ed to revisit transgender inclusion in girls' sports. The chancellor rejected that, so the Manhattan Borough president reached in, Mark Levine, and this is not him. This is the guy who's the
Craig Slutskin.
He's gay apparently, who did this, and he's removing him from the community board.
Some pushback on that. And New York City is being sued by a male couple because male employees are the only ones denied IVF coverage by city insurance.
We've got a picture of the guys, Corey Briskin and Nicholas Maggi Pinto.
The excuse is they're not infertile. They're not creating a child between them.
So they're suing. And, don't forget, Aetna, we was reported last week, finally gave in on this and is going to cover it.
And in Utah, there's a law soliciting reports of people with the wrong gender in bathrooms. Activists are flooding the tip line so that the state cannot actually track people down.
In Wappinger Falls in Dutchess County, New York, a group of students at John Jay High School, some were against trans inclusion, others were for it, so they both had walkouts over this. That's, but the trans students are complaining of the bullying that's going on over this.
Everywhere. All right, we need to talk about people we've lost this week, starting in Philadelphia with a trans woman who was a beloved local drag performer. There she is, Delicious O'Hare Mizani. Died after an attack by a teen gang on the street. And went to the hospital, but the hospital sent her home with Percocet, and then she died.
Called one of the best dancers in the city. And there were separate shootings in Nevada and Alabama that took the lives of two trans teen girls, Jaslyn, Johnson, 18 years old, at left, was gunned down May 6th in Carson City, Nevada, by a 17-year-old who was taken into custody. She was a senior at Pioneer Academy. And in Mobile, Alabama, Tay Dior, 17, was shot dead at 3:30 a.m. on May 7th. Police arrested Carl Mitchell Washington Jr., 20, of Mobile, who fired 18 shots at her. Tay worked at AMC Theaters and was scheduled to graduate high school.
In Honolulu, Hawaii, Dr. Milton Diamond died at the age of 90. Dr. Diamond was famous for standing up for the rights of intersex people to self-define.
In 1973, because in the old days, under the advisement of Dr. John Money, another famous psychologist, they said, if it's ambiguous, cut it off.
Right.
Because it's easier to dig a hole than build a pole. This was the expression. And they will just become what you are making them because of nurture. But they aren't. And it ruined the lives of all these kids.
They grew up and said, wait a minute, this is not who I am.
Right.
And we will be celebrating the life on Saturday, June 8th, of our friend Joan Gibbs, who's seen on this program several times, at the People's Forum at 320 West 37th Street, 1 to 5 p.m.
It's going to be live streamed, and we're going to include that link in our email.
All right, so we'll zip through some international news.
Yes. Well, where's my internet? Oh, there we are.
In the Czech Republic, the Constitutional Court struck down the law requiring forced sterilization of trans people. This was a European phenomenon for many years, that to redefine your gender and to get new documents, you had to be sterilized. And that has gone out of fashion and has now been outlawed in the Czech Republic.
Okay.
In Russia, they are removing LGBT books from stores and online sites, continuing their purge of our existence from every corner of the country. And in Australia, in Sydney, a suburb of Sydney, Cumberland, the city council banned LGBTQ books in the library, but the townspeople are so appalled by this that they are fighting back.
The Eurovision contest, very big in Europe. Nemo became the first non-binary winner representing Switzerland. 37 countries competed. Nemo's song, The Code, was written by Nemo to explain how they came out as trans, somewhere between the zeros and the ones.
Got a hero's welcome going back to Switzerland and promised to fight for rights for non-binary people.
And
in Ireland, the Belfast has elected a gay Lord Mayor, Mickey Murray.
Yep.
We have a little video of him.
I think I bring something new. I mean, I'm going to be the very first openly gay Lord Mayor that we've ever had in the city. 130 years history of the Lord Mayor position, and we've never had someone who's openly LGBT. I think that's something that I bring to the role, some representation of a community that's never been represented in that role?
He says my sexuality is relevant for my community. It does matter. He works in a homeless the sector of service, and he's the first non-unionist to get the position.
Terrible story out of Argentina in Buenos Aires. A 62-year-old man set fire to a boarding house room that contained 2 lesbian couples. One of the women is dead. 3 are badly injured. The LGBT Federation in Buenos Aires is blaming the homophobia of the new Malay government there.
Sure. And in Belgium, in a world first, sex workers are going to get health insurance, pensions, and maternity leave. The country approved a labor law on it, and it's quite groundbreaking. In
Israel, in the midst of the Israel-Gaza war, the Tel Aviv Pride Parade has been canceled this year. Not a time for celebrations, they say. Instead, there will be a rally for pride, hope, and freedom. Whatever. In South Korea, the Seoul government has again rejected the Queer Culture Festival from the City Hall Plaza. This year's excuse is that there is an outdoor library being erected. But they will hold the cultural festival in the streets of Seoul.
Get ready for the Olympics. Drag star Nikki Dahl carried the Olympic flame for a stretch in Arles, France on Sunday, on its way to the Olympics that begin in Paris soon. Nikki was a contestant on season 12 of RuPaul's Drag Race and the host of Drag Race France. But Dahl was the second drag queen to carry the torch. The first was Miss Martini the day before. And Dahl said the flame passes from hand to hand with no concern for sexual orientation or profession. And then the big news is, we've told you, drag queen is scheduled to carry it in Paris, minima geste.
And we've told you that Taiwan is sending a drag queen as its representative to the Olympics, Nymphia Wind. And there's video of Nymphia doing a performance for the president of Taiwan in the presidential palace that we are linking to in our weekly show notes. So again, go to gayusatv.org to sign up for that, and you can get that video.
All right.
But the biggest international news, I think, is Kevin Spacey.
Oh, right. Okay.
So Channel 4 in Britain did a 2-part documentary, 2 hours, of 10 men individually accusing Kevin of sexual advances inappropriately or assaults over decades. And then Kevin did an interview with a sympathetic interviewer for an hour and a half, replying to all that.
This is now streaming on Max.
Yes.
And ID?
It's aired on ID last week and this week. I don't know if it's still available there, but it's on Max.
I have some links to it that are on the internet, which I will share in our email.
We can flip through the pictures of the men who are accusers.
That's Seth Numerick, a very accomplished actor. Spacey went after him when he was a student at Juilliard. Said it was going to...
Yeah, we don't... let's...
All right, the next one is Danny, who was an usher at the Old Vic. Horrible experience. Scott, an ex-Marine who met Spacey at a club and went to a movie with him and said Spacey started masturbating during Saving Private Ryan and tried to get him to, Then there's Andy, who worked at the Public Theater. He was a gay guy who, when Spacey was there at the Shakespeare in the Park, and just came in the office silently and just thrust himself on him. And then there is Daniel, who played a Secret Service agent on House of Cards, who said Spacey went after his private parts. And then there was Rory at the Old Vic, who was in a production, who also went after him right on the, opening night line. This kind of stuff. And for some of these guys, there's a lot of pain and some of them left the profession over this.
So the 2 hour-long parts of the Channel 4 documentary, these guys are very explicit, very detailed about what happened to them. In various levels, in various ways. Spacey admits to some of it, denies some of it, but underplays, dismisses the seriousness of all of it and says, so I was a little rude.
I might have been drunk and I grabbed people. Oh, come on. He even went after a guy in high school, just grabbed his genitals in a car and said, everybody did that in high school. No, they didn't.
No. So, watch it, make up your own mind. But
I've made up my mind about him a long time ago.
Well, how do you think he keeps getting, I know you have.
He's got great lawyers and he's a great actor. And some of these charges, of course, are very old and they're hard to prove in court. But you judge, you be the judge, you listen to them. And as Seth Numerick says, he ain't coming back because that's what he wants.
Oh, the interviewer asks him if he thinks he should do another season of House of Cards.
I've been found not guilty. Why aren't they having me back?
Yes, exactly. And he has a couple of movies in the can that he's waiting to have released that haven't been released. So
he faces civil liability in the United Kingdom for the actions that he beat the criminal charges on.
Well, what this is at least a chance finally to hear directly from all of them, from all the accusers and from him.
Yes.
And
you
can
decide.
decide. Yeah.
We report, you decide.
All right, moving on.
Billy Porter, the star of
Oh, wait.
What?
Health news.
Who are we skipping? Oh, go ahead.
You may or may not be aware that there is a decades-long study of nurses' health study. Nurses became a good subject for study, and 100,000 of them have been under study since 1989, 35 years. Well, they've teased out some more. They're constantly issuing reports of various aspects of their health. And the Journal of the American Medical Association has just published a new study where they looked at lesbian and bisexual women among these nurses to look at their mortality. And we know that lesbian and bisexual people have worse health situations often. And now this has shown that they die sooner. But the study says that they do have different issues of health, but these earlier deaths are largely due to discrimination.
Sure.
It's about how these health problems are not recognized or not treated or dismissed. And it's a fascinating study, and they end up saying it doesn't kill to be gay, it kills to be discriminated against.
Of course.
So,
stress.
Good new information.
All right. Entertainment news.
Yes.
Billy Porter, the star of Pose, who won a Tony in 2013 for playing Lola in Kinky Boots, is going to be getting the Isabel Stevenson Award at this year's Tony Awards in recognition of his humanitarian contributions and for being a spokesperson for the LGBTQI communities.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's all right.
I expected more. Did you see Saturday Night Live with Maya Rudolph the Mother's Day show? I'm very sick of that show, and I think they do really unfunny stuff, a lot of it. But this was a really especially good show, and Maya Rudolph was in every single sketch. Except Weekend Update, and she was absolutely terrific.
I'll have to watch online.
Well, you can skip Weekend Update because Michael Che throws in a couple more homophobic jokes, as he is wont to do, but she was terrific.
Sarah Paulson, Tony nominated for Appropriate on Broadway, was profiled on CBS Sunday Morning last weekend, including how she and actor Holland Taylor make their relationship work. They don't live together. That's the way they like it. But it's
not a bad system.
It goes into a lot. I'm going to link to this in our email. You'll get so much in the email this week.
Well, evidently they were not hanging out at the lesbian community in St. Augustine, Florida, that existed for about 25 years. That is the subject of a new book called The Pagoda by Rose Norman, which is getting great reviews. I've heard of these lesbian communities in Florida, and I regret missing them, but this book is supposed to be special.
Marvel Comics is rolling out a series of go for Hacks. Oh, no, Hacks is later.
Yeah.
Marvel Comics is rolling out a series of Pride covers in June, including this one featuring Daredevil at the end of June on the 26th. But it starts out with X-Men on June 5th, followed by Incredible Hulk, Scarlet Witch, Spider-Man, Captain America, and the immortal Thor, not afraid to be associated with LGBTQ stuff.
Not yet. Do you know that Red, White, and Royal Blue is having a second
almost immediately. It was very successful.
Yeah, well, it's in development now.
And that Galitzine, the
yes,
guy who played the prince
Nick,
or whatever,
I think, yeah.
He's, of course, very big. I watched that movie with him and
What's its name?
Well, no, she won the Academy.
The Julianne Moore.
No. I watched that too.
Yeah.
Well, he's everywhere.
We're getting tired at the end of our hour.
We are tired.
So I did watch. I have started.
Anne Hathaway, that movie.
Thank you. Hacks is back, which makes me just thrilled because I love that series. This is now season 3 of Hacks with Jean Smart and Hannah Einbinder as her beleaguered assistant. They're just slightly over half-hour episodes, 7 episodes per season. You can catch up easily, and you should start from season 1. You can get up to date in a second.
Don't we have a country to go out and save?
After you watch Hacks, it's on Max. I wish it were on regular HBO, but it's on Max, which you get free if you have HBO. But I had to, maneuver signing up for it. But it's so good. And Hannah Einbinder plays a bisexual character, really more lesbian, and she has a really good girlfriend this year. And they have a naked sex scene in a shower. Well, it's become more explicit each season, but they also have problems. So, but it's nice to see that.
Tell me about what you missed in Mexico.
Well, this is my story that I entitle, I Left Cabo, Mexico Too Soon. That's where I was for almost 2 weeks. And here it is, the wedding of Maria Bello, actress, and her longtime girlfriend, Michelin star chef Dominique Crenn, married in Cabo 3 days after I left, with their kids, their parents, their
with Mariska Hargitay, Vanessa Getty, Gavin Rossdale, Patricia Arquette were there, 140 guests.
I drove by that resort several times because there's a string of resorts on the coast, and that's one of them. But I come home and I read this and I think, oh my God, look what I missed. I should have stayed longer.
Their first dance was to ABBA's Dancing Queen.
Yeah. And do you have anything else?
No.
I have one you commented last week on Phil Donahue getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom and mentioned that I had been on the show.
Could probably link to that as well.
Well, you could actually, but certainly no greater friend of the community than Phil Donahue for many, many years. But I was actually on a second time on Donahue when his staff called me. The first show was about ACT UP. Yeah. Larry Kramer, Peter Staley, Robert Garcia, me, and Mark Harrington. Very good show. But then his staff calls me up and says, we're doing a show on why gay people and bisexuals hate each other. And I said, we don't hate each other. What are you talking about? Yes, we want you to come on and talk about why you hate each other. I said, I'm not going to say that. They said, no, we must have you come on. And they just would not take no for an answer.
Please.
So I agreed to do it. Found out, yes, we have a few seconds. Found out who else was going to be on the show, the bisexuals, arranged a meeting because I knew them. We planned our whole thing, went on the show and said, we don't hate each other. And Phil Donahue was fit to be tied. He was so upset because we had ruined his theme of hatred.
Well.
And we still don't hate each other, and nor should you.
Love, more love.
Happy to be back. See you next week.